The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres denounced the non-fulfillment and violation of human rights worldwide during the Human Rights Council held in Geneva. In Venezuela, a Conviasa airplane arrived from Mexico with a new group of 22 Venezuelans as part of the return to the homeland plan. And in Germany, the CDU-CSU alliance won 208 seats in parliament with 28.6% of the vote in Sunday's early elections. Friedrich Merz is set to start talks to form a new coalition. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres denounced the non-fulfillment and violation of human rights worldwide during the Human Rights Council held in Geneva on Monday. Guterres expressed that actions against the rights of humanity are due to autocratic governments that eliminate the opposition because they fear retaliation from empowered peoples. The diplomat warned that the military that take part in the conflicts disregard international humanitarian law and the United Nations Charter. Meanwhile, the head asserted that violating human rights poses a direct threat to all the mechanisms and systems that had been so hard to establish in the last 80 years.
Recent rollbacks on social media fact-checking and content moderation are reopening the floodgates to more hate, more threats, and more violence. Make no mistake. These rollbacks will lead to less free speech, not more. Meanwhile, the great promise of artificial intelligence is matched by limitless peril to undermine human autonomy, human identity, human control, and yes, human rights.
For his part, the Bolivian President Luis Arce reaffirmed his commitment to peace and non-discrimination at the high-level 58th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President, Bolivia is a state that promotes a culture of peace and firmly condemns all forms of aggression and domination. In 2002, in the United Nations General Assembly framework, we proposed the idea of encouraging the denial of depatriarchalization with the purpose of deepening policies to eradicate violence against women and guarantee their equal participation in decision-making, challenging the patriarchal structures that still limit the full exercise of their rights. From our position as members of the Executive Board of the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and to the present management as Vice President for the region of Latin America and the Caribbean, we redouble our commitment to a childhood and adolescence free of violence, exploitation, and discrimination.
Likewise, President Arce denounced the Israeli ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza, urging the Netanyahu government to comply with the ceasefire agreement.
Mr. President, we denounce with concern the humanitarian devastation caused by armed violence in different parts of the world. The genocide against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, which has not yet ceased, is a brutal reminder of the urgency to uphold international humanitarian law and to put an end to the impunity of those who commit war crimes, including those against humanity.
The Venezuelan Chancellor Ivan Gil denounced the Western hypocrisy, the silence in the face of the genocide in the Gaza Strip and the attacks against sovereign governments at the United Nations Human Rights Council.
The
United Nations organization, instead of being a space for justice and peace, has become a market where human rights are auctioned off to the highest bidder. While campaigns of disinformation against Venezuela are being waged in this council, there is absolute silence in the face of the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, carried out with the complicity of the same actors who here present themselves as moral judges. It is the height of hypocrisy, and it is not just silence, it is institutionalized corruption. US aid has financed phantom projects with the sole purpose of attacking sovereign governments. How much of these funds have been used under the cover of resolutions emanating from this council?
Hill denounced the resurgence of fascism as the greatest danger facing humanity and criticized its manifestation in conflicts such as those in Ukraine and Palestine, as well as repression in Latin America.
The resurgence of fascism is the greatest danger facing humanity. In Ukraine, the conflict has been turned into a pretext for prolonging the war and maintaining the machinery of death. In Palestine, an attempt has been made to justify barbarism with a discourse of absolute cynicism. In Latin America, soft coups, judicial persecution and repression are being used to confront any attempt at real change. That is why, in Venezuela, we have decided that Caracas will be the world capital of the fight against fascism. We will not remain silent while the world returns to the darkest times in its history. We do not accept its order based on rules that aim to maintain the privileges of a few and condemn the peoples to subjugation.
A Conviasa airline plane arrived in Venezuela from Mexico with a new group of 242 Venezuelans as part of the return to the homeland plan. At the Simón Bolívar International Airport in the state of La Guaira, the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, welcomed the third flight of Venezuelans, including women, children and teenagers. Cabello stated that state agencies prepared the medical and psychological protocols for the evaluation of some 94 men, 75 youth and 74 women. The planned return to the homeland has a humanist nature born in the Venezuelan Revolution by the hand of President Nicolás Maduro in 2018. Its mission is the return of Venezuelan migrants free of charge and with respect for their rights.
And we, from here from Venezuela, the organizations that have been receiving Venezuelans, ready and willing to assist them, to register their identity, to give them the identity card to those who need it, and then the medical examination, the psychological examination, the interviews, and then comes the police background check of each one of the adults that come back. We do this thoroughly, a required step. Why is this necessary? Well, because the first information is that criminals of all kinds were coming from the United States, and when we arrived here that is not the reality. The reality is that they are a minority, that members of El Tren de Aragua were coming. Here are the members of the security agencies, not one was a member.
In Switzerland, the Venezuelan government held a meeting with the Minister of International Cooperation of Qatar, Mariam Al-Nusad, in order to strengthen bilateral relations. The meeting took place within the framework of the 58th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council held in Geneva. In this regard, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Ivan Hill highlighted that the meeting led to the strengthening of bilateral cooperation in key areas such as tourism, trade and energy. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Germany, the CDU-CSU alliance won 208 seats in parliament with 28.6% of the vote in Sunday's early elections. The far-right Alternative for Germany party came in second and secured 152 seats with 20.8% of the vote, doubling what it polled in the last election. The leader of the Christian Democratic Union reiterated his stance on not cooperating with the far-right AfD party. Friedrich Merz also pledged to achieve independence from the United States. Electoral authorities registered a high turnout at 82.5%, the highest since German reunification in 1990. The CDU leader Merz is set to start talks to form a new coalition. Following the victory of the German conservatives, CDU, and the results obtained by the far-right AfD party in the early federal elections, people gathered outside the CDU headquarters to express their concern.
Friedrich Merz used to work for BlackRock, which is the largest financial group in the world, probably the most powerful company in the world. That he is even allowed to stand in an election at all is actually a huge mess. It's actually corruption. Anyone who has worked for the company does not represent the interests of the population. They represent the interests of people who buy exchange-traded funds, and they're the world's second largest investor in fossil fuels. This is a policy that has no place in the second millennium.
Of course, we are angry that the CDU got such a high percentage, and also the AfD. That scares us and makes us angry. But we are pleased that a left-wing party, which has somehow been the only one to manage to take a stand against this in recent times, has received so many percentages, which has only become apparent very unexpectedly in the last few weeks.
Let's now take a closer look at the CDU candidate that led the election and now hopes to become Germany's chancellor. Friedrich Merz is a 69-year-old Christian Democrat who represents Germany's richest and most populous state, North Rhine-Westphalia, where he was born. To this moment, he has never held a government role, despite having aspired to the highest office in Berlin for over 20 years. Longtime rival of centrist former Chancellor Angela Merkel within the CDU party, Merz was twice rejected as her successor as party leader, both in 2018 and 2021. Merz left politics for a lucrative second career at the world's largest asset management corporation, BlackRock, in 2016, and also served on many corporate boards which have made him a millionaire. Regarding future policy, he has pledged to scrap unemployment benefits and easier citizenship rules and to introduce tougher border controls. Despite pledging to kill off the far-right AfD, he has already sought its support on migration clampdown. Russian forces on Sunday liberated the town of Topoli in the Kharkiv region, which had been occupied by the Ukrainian regime. The Russian ministry said that during the military operations, the northern group killed at least 25 Ukrainian soldiers in the city of Kharkov, while the total number in Lugansk was 200. A number of weapons were also destroyed, including 6 field artillery guns and 4 military vehicles, most of them of Western manufacture. Since the beginning of the Russian special operation, Ukraine has lost 656 fighter planes, 283 helicopters, and more than 44,330 unmanned aerial vehicles. Audits of the United States Agency for International Development and USAID found that the agency spent more than $14 million in funding to non-governmental organizations between 2013 and 2014. The data shows that with USAID support, the organizations provided more than 110 local facilitation grants and helped more than 550 organizations improve their internal structures. Similarly, the information details how these organizations supported and boosted the 2013 Ukrainian protest known as Euromaidan, which led to the overthrow of President Viktor Yanukovych in February 2014. During a joint news conference with the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Ankara, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow is ready to negotiate with both Ukraine and Europe, but will stop military operations only when the negotiations yield a firm, sustainable result.
We are ready to negotiate with both Ukraine and Europe, with any representatives who in a spirit of goodwill would like to help achieve peace. But we will stop military operations only when these negotiations produce a firm, sustainable result that will be acceptable to the Russian Federation. Ukraine's absolute non-accession to NATO is also a must. There must be a clear, iron-solid agreement on this. At the meeting in Riyadh with our U.S. colleagues, we welcome the fact that President Trump has publicly and repeatedly called the line on pulling Ukraine into NATO as a mistake.
In France, explosions are reported at the facilities of the Russian consulate in the city of Marseille. According to local media, the Russian consul in France has confirmed that the explosions took place inside the building without causing any injuries. The spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry pointed out that the attack on the consulate had all the hallmarks of a terrorist attack and urged the French government to take the necessary measures to investigate and strengthen security on the territory of the Russian consulate. Earlier, Moscow's Foreign Intelligence Service warned that Ukraine could carry out terrorist attacks against Russian diplomatic missions in order to disrupt negotiations on the settlement of the conflict in Ukraine. And we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Vatican officials said on Monday that Pope Francis had slept well and was resting, although he remains in a critical condition at Rome's Gemelli Hospital. The update was released in a brief statement by the press office of the Holy See after this Sunday reported that some blood tests show an initial mild renal insufficiency currently under control. In the medical report of Sunday afternoon, it was explained that the Argentine pontiff, admitted since February 14th with bilateral pneumonia, had not had any more respiratory crisis like the one he suffered on Saturday, but that he was still being supplied with oxygen through nasal cannulas. In Mexico, hundreds of faithfuls went to the Basilica of Guadalupe to pray for the health of Pope Francis. Since the early hours of this Sunday morning, hundreds of Catholic faithful have been going to the most important Marian shrine in the Americas to pray for the speedy recovery of Pope Francis. In 2016, the leader of the Catholic Church visited the holy site to express his connection to the Virgin of Guadalupe. Similar masses for the health of the Supreme Pontiff have been held in Brazil, Guatemala, Honduras, Argentina, Colombia, Italy, and the United States, among other countries. Feminist organizations in Paraguay denounced that the government of Santiago Peña wants to close the Ministries of Women's Affairs. In the framework of the Paraguayan Women's Day, the feminist articulation, together with other organizations, denounced a profound instability of work, mainly due to the lack of public policies for indigenous communities. The organization also denounced that women do not receive a decent salary and that the amounts they receive are lower than those paid to men. For the second year in a row, feminist organizations denounced the ultra-right's intentions to abolish the laws and the ministry that protect women against all forms of violence.
As something to be expected from this government and the whole international situation, we also know that from other countries in the region, including the United States, with the inauguration of Trump, let's say that this is the proposal, to reduce women's rights, because in reality what they want is to silence us. In reality, they want us to remove us from the spaces because they want to sustain their social economic policies in order to always benefit only themselves.
This March 8th, us women are going out to march very worried because of the threats that exist to eliminate the Ministry of Women, the Ministry of Children and Adolescents, and also the Law 57/77-16, against all types of violence against women. These ministries were conquests of years of much struggle, and we are not willing to back down. We defend what is ours.
In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, schools began to reopen in the city of Bukavu after the M23 armed group and Rwandan troops seized the city earlier this month. Violence ranging in eastern DRC has killed more than 7,000 people, many of them civilians, since last month. M23 forces seized large swaths of the mineral-rich eastern DRC, including the main cities of Goma and Bukavu. Prime Minister Judith Suminwa told the United Nations Human Rights Council that the security situation in eastern DRC reached alarming levels. In this context, teachers and some parents called on others to send their children to school to save the school year and ensure that children can enjoy their right to an education.
We have asked children and parents to send us pupils from all over. The reasons for the resumption are that pupils have a right to education because they are the future. Safety is guaranteed and the national calendar will not be changed.
In any case, I would ask all parents who are still hesitating to send their children to school to save this school year because otherwise it will not be beneficial for the children. I really ask all children and all parents to take heart and get back to work. Life has already returned to normal in Bukavu.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media as well. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.